I've got a book here with a very aggressive title. my
I've
fight
been called that.
My fight with God, he won and so did I. And that's actually your picture on the cover there, Brian. Brian Klemmer is my guest. Welcome.
Thank you very much
good
for
to have
having
you
me.
here. You're a busy guy. You founded Klemmer and Associates, and you go all around the world in business seminars. You've written other books like The Compassionate Samurai and Jesus is the Ultimate Compassionate Samurai and stuff like that. But my fight with God. What's up with this? I got the sense when I was reading it that you're a believer with an attitude.
You know, I was told that even way back in my West Point days, another lifetime ago. Yeah. But yeah, I got led to Christ when I thought life wasn't fair. I went through West Point by the mid-'70s. This is after Vietnam. I thought, man, if there was a God, he was doing a rotten job. Life just didn't seem fair. And then I met a gentleman who was a businessman, but his whole family was ministers, and he had me read the Bible as a business book.
He became a mentor for you.
Yes, he did. Very, very important mentor.
William was his name? Bill?
Tom.
Tom. Okay. I'm reading so many books all the time, I get mixed up. But he had a huge impact on you.
Huge.
He's from a Pentecostal preacher's family.
Yes, everybody in his family was a minister except him. Yeah. But that was what appealed to me, because many times in my experience of Christians previously, they may be kind and caring, but that's the compassion side, but they weren't the samurai side. They weren't, they hear the cry for Cambodia and they go, man, I'd really like to help, but yeah. I don't have enough money as it is for myself in this thing. By the way, we're going to donate to that too. And
thank you.
And so anyway, that's what appealed to me about him. He was a producer. And so...
well, you really deal with some difficult passages. You talk about the issue of forgiveness in the parable of the prodigal son. You talk about good guys finishing last. You've got a great. It's the final chapter with the Beatitudes.
Blessed are the meek.
Yeah.
They shall inherit the earth. I'd read that and I'd go, no way.
Yeah, I mean, you're.
Tell me you go to heaven, but not that you inherit the earth.
Yeah, well, you're a West Point graduate and you're a hard-nosed businessman, and this is just not the language of your world, is it?
It wasn't.
At least it wasn't. It wasn't.
Right.
Now, well, let's talk about that meek thing. What did you discover about meekness as you began to fight with God over it?
Well, at first it made no sense at all. If you told me the meek shall get to heaven, I might not like it, but I could understand it. But inherit the earth, get all the goodies, be successful, business, whatever, it made no sense. And then I'd read the Bible and I'd see Moses was the meekest of all men. He choked a guy to death with his bare hands. That didn't seem meek. And then my mentor started working with me on how words change meaning over time. He'd work with me how years ago my kids twisted the word bad to mean good. You say, how was the movie tonight, son? Oh, it was bad. Oh, it wasn't very good. No, it was bad. Like bad meant good. The word fat nowadays has nothing to do with size of a person's body. It has to do with it's plush or it's luxurious. So if words change meaning over a 10, 15-year period, Bible is translated English from 1611, 400 years saying. So I find out that meek basically means submissive. So what was Moses submissive to? He wasn't submissive to the whines and moans and groans of the people. He was submissive to the will of God. And so, boy, that's to me, Christians, when you read the New Testament in the early years, were envied by people. They were what I call compassionate samurai. These were make it happen dudes. And if we have a God that is infinite, which we do, I believe as Christians we're called to do the impossible. If we're not doing the impossible, we're embarrassing God. Flat out embarrassing him. That's what he wants us to do to glorify him. Yeah. So I'm on a mission to train people, disciple people. And it's okay this book, I want it to be okay for people to question God, to wrestle with God, because sometimes as Christians, we're almost embarrassed to ask questions like, gosh, I'll be judged in my Bible study group if I ask this question maybe I'll be viewed as a non-Christian if I even ask this question. But man, there's some stuff in the Bible that flat out twisted my head around.
See, I remember when I was a kid that doubting was seen as sinful. And I remember
disrespectful.
Yeah, or disrespectful.
Right.
I remember thinking as a kid, what? If I'm doubting, it means my brain's in gear. I mean,
That's-
is that a bad thing that my brain's in gear? I don't think so. And you talk in the book about the value of doubting and how the Lord loves to respond to a good old doubt or two.
That's absolutely. And I think that's what gets Scripture from our head into our heart or our subconscious mind, is when we wrestle with it, we become emotionally involved.
You mentioned wrestle. It's interesting in its barest etymological analysis. The word Israel means God wrestler. You know, Jacob wrestled with the Lord, but the Israel in Hebrew means God wrestler, or, you know, one who wrestles with the Lord. And God always responds to a good wrestling match. It means that you not only have your brain in gear, but you got strength of your convictions, right?
Right.
And you're ready to, you know, I think I'll find it. I'll find it here somewhere.
By the way, this is a great book. This is come up to Christmas time. If people have a friend that is maybe believes in God but doesn't really go to church, doesn't have a personal walk with Christ. I have a couple that's like that. I just came back from preaching in Russia, and she said, my husband and I are reading this thing every day, having discussions about God every day, when they are normally not that kind of people. And so this is a great gift to give to somebody that will open up a dialogue with God.
You're a great salesman.
So
No, here I found it on page 114, and you quote Isaiah, and as I'm reading your book, I'm thinking, here it is, right here. This is what this whole book is about, really. Let the wicked forsake his way, the evil man his thoughts. Let him turn to the Lord. He'll have mercy on him and to our God, for he will freely pardon. For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declare the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts. That's Isaiah 55, 7-9. The whole book is about his thoughts being not our thoughts. His ways higher.
I don't have a right to play God and decide what's fair. When I look at it, cry Cambodia, why is a child in that circumstance, and I'm born in America? I do not have God's eyes, and so I have to, many times when I'm reading the Bible, give up my idea of fairness and just go, okay, God, what lesson do you have in this story? I mean, I went bankrupt. Somebody faked a back injury, saw I had money, faked a back injury, sued me, lost $500,000. This is about 12 years ago. I'm praying to God, why me? When I heard back from God, why not you? So we all have stuff that happens that from our eyes not fair. Maybe we'll never understand why it happened. What we got to do is grow stronger, be more of a gladiator, overcome it, and glorify God.
I want to get back to the Beatitudes. You mentioned a few places in the book that mercy trumps justice, and I agree with you. In one of my books, I made that same comment. Mercy trumps justice. But I'd like you to comment on something you say in that section on blessed are the merciful, for they shall obtain mercy. You say justice is giving people what they deserve. Mercy is not giving people what they deserve. Grace is giving people more than they deserve.
Yes.
Comment on that.
Well, first of all, I used to be it sounds stupid, but in my military days, I actually had a plaque on my desk that said, no slack cut here, no compassion at all. It was like, suck it up and do whatever.
Yeah, lead, follow, or get out of the way.
And justice was my big thing, an eye for an eye, be fair. Well, when you step back and you look, God gives up his only son through painful crucifixion. What would I give up one of my kids for? I have 3 children that are grown. None of us deserve what God's given us. None of us do. And so now I'm very grateful for grace. Now mercy, at least in me, I think there definitely is a place for justice. It's not like justice should be thrown out the window. I just know in my life, I had that end down. What I needed to work on was the mercy and the grace side and showing that to people.
Yeah. You also, in that section, make another, and it's a very profound point. I mean, in some ways, it's blatantly obvious.
It's good that a couple profound things.
No, more than a couple. You say the most fascinating thing with heaven to me was I couldn't earn my way in. Yeah. You were a earn your way in kind of guy.
Absolutely. That the story, the rich man passing through the eye of the needle. You know, first I'd read that and I'd think, gosh, first I learned kingdom principles which allow me to create prosperity, and now I got to give it all up. This is insane. But part of that story was the rich man had the same problem as he couldn't even hear Jesus because he was looking to earn his way in. And so that was a whole novel concept for me.
Are you familiar with the eye of the needle historically?
Well, I've heard different versions, and I've been to Jerusalem, and I've seen the little doors and how the camels that have to get on their knees to get through. So
well, I mean, that's basically the point. It was either that, or it could have. There's apparently one area there where the road from Damascus to Jerusalem, there's a very narrow gap that the caravans had to go through, and this one narrow gap was so narrow that the camels, if they were overloaded or kind of fat, would have a hard time squeezing through. Yeah. And they apparently used to call that the eye of the needle. But then, of course, Jesus used hyperbole all the time. He could very well have been saying, "Here's a needle," and camel going through it. But it's a powerful imagery. One other thing I want to ask you. Boy, our time is flying by here. And I highlighted it, and I just have to. Oh, I know what it was. You finished with this famous poem from Rudyard Kipling.
One of my.
You know, he goes through all of these conditions, and at the end he says, "You'll be a man, my son." I had the sense as I was reading your book, and you know, maybe I'm reading into it, like, you know, eisegesis, you read into it, but. This book, in some ways, is a description of how to become a man, in a sense, in that and I'm not talking sexist here. I'm talking about how to become an adult. You're dealing with a God whose thoughts are not your thoughts, whose ways are not your ways. They're way above. And like a child, you wrestle with your self-focus, your self-interest, your navel gaze, and you see everything through the lens of what's good and what's bad for you, instead of seeing the big picture. It seems to me, as I was reading the book, I get to that poem, this is about getting out of oneself and embracing the vastness, the largeness of God's mercy. Am I on track there?
No, very much so. My business, I disciple people and make what I call compassionate samurai, or in the Christian world, I call them killer sheep. But it's gladiators that do good. That's what it's about. Yeah. And that's a mature person, to me, is not somebody that's self-centered. Part of the challenge today, especially in America, other parts of the world too, but you ask people what's success, and their definition is centered around acquisition, consumption, accumulation. It's not about contribution. That's a fundamental problem.
Yeah, well, adults contribute. Brian Klemmer is the author, My Fight with God. Thanks for coming our way.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
It's great.